Okay, so my daughter is 2 years old, August 27th, and she has been seizure free for 2 years. She is currently on triliptol twice a day, which I love. I haven't hired her dosage at all since she has been on it. Unless she has a seizure, I'm not going to hire it. One, do not let them put your baby on Keppra. Keppra, the one side effect that they have, they'll tell you, oh, your baby will be might throw temper tantrums, let us know if it's too much, we'll give her some vitamins to help out. But no, the Keppra is depressing. If you go online and do research on adults who take Keppra, they talk about how they're so sad that they can't even get up to go to the fridge to get water, that they are so depressed. And so the first 2 months that my daughter's seizures were out of control, one, she was on Keppra, and they kept upping her dose and upping her dose and upping her dose, and she was still having them randomly and spread out, but at least one a day. Sometimes she would go a few days without having them, and then 1 week they would up her dose, but then she would have a bunch, and then they're like, oh, she's just getting used to her dose. But the 2 months that she was on Keppra, my daughter was a different kid. And I was crying because I know that something had happened. Like, she was not the same. Like, if she had brain damage or something was wrong with her, I could tell that my kid was not the same kid, that she was completely changed. And one, I thought it was the seizures doing that. Like, she's not the same kid. And they assured me that seizures don't cause brain damage. But that's another subject. I think that's a bunch of bull. Just because you can't see brain damage on a scan or proof of it doesn't mean that seizures are not hurting your baby in some way. Like, you can't look at a child having a seizure and says, there's no harm being done. That's just straight dumb. I think it's hurting them tremendously in some way, and just because it's not on a test or a scan doesn't mean it's not there. So, two is she was a different baby because of Keppra. Right when they took her off Keppra and put her on triliptol, she was I got my baby back. She was back. She was happy, and it was because the Keppra was making her sad and depressed. And she would throw some tantrums sometimes, but it was more like she was just sad. She was empty. She wasn't there, you know? But it was the Keppra. So don't let them put your baby on Keppra if you don't want your baby to be sad, because she's already going through enough, going through hospitals and having seizures. She doesn't need to be sad on top of it. So do not use Keppra. And two, this video is for babies under 2 years old who have seizures. When they're a lot older, you can explain things to them. They could sit still. They could put the EEG scan on their head and they won't move. But when they're babies, that's just torture. They're sticking them with needles, looking at you as a mom, and you're doing nothing but watching them hurt your baby. So getting a seizure on an EEG scan is not important, because if they get it on an EEG scan, all they're going to say is, yep, they're seizures. Okay, then why put your baby in the emergency room through the hospital for 3 days just to say, oh yeah, they are seizures, what we thought they were? If you have video of them and they're happening constantly and medication does work, then they're seizures. Wait till your baby's a little older to try and get one if it doesn't get resolved by growth or other things like that. So, and then if it's a seizure, if they show that it's not a seizure, oh, they want to show also what they say. They want to get it on the EEG scan so they could say they're real seizures, and to tell you what part of the brain. So they could tell you what part of the brain that the seizure starts in. Did you know that they found out what part of the brain my daughter's seizures started in? And guess what difference it made? Nothing. Them catching a seizure on an EEG scan told me nothing. Did nothing, changed nothing. So as long as your medication that you have for your baby is working, you don't need to get a freaking seizure on an EEG scan. You could get DNA testing, you could get other testing done to rule out the big things, but finding out what part of the brain it starts in, or if it's all over, it doesn't change anything. Your baby's going to stay on medication and has to be seizure-free for 2 years for them to do anything. And not only that, is if your baby's on medication and she's not having seizures and the medication is working, all of that other crap can wait until you try and take her off medication and she still has seizures. Then your baby will be old enough to go on that scan and it not be torture, and her understand that they're trying to get a little more information. But they say that if your baby has seizures when they're little, there's a high percentage that your baby grows out of it. Just like how we get a cut and our body heals itself. Well, her brain's still developing, and our body adapts to whatever we put it through or whatever we do to it. We have an auto fix in our body. That's how God made us. So because their brain is still little, as they grow, they could grow out of it, meaning that her brain will see the error and fix it as it grows. It will see that there's something wrong, and our body fixes it. So if your baby's small and they have seizures, it is the worst and hardest thing that you could go through as a mom. The worst. It was torture for me. But 2 things: get the right medication, get your baby seizure free, and be happy. And don't worry about them requiring you to have a freaking seizure on an EEG scan. Especially if your baby's under 1. Dude, I was hospitalized 3 times for 3 days each time. Some days a little more. And it was torture. It was torture. Don't put your baby through that, because those hospitalizations did nothing for me. Nothing. All they did was send me home with a higher dose, or change my medication, or torture her for a few more days and get nothing. And when they did get it on the EEG scan, like I said, nothing changed. The reason why we changed her to triliptol is because Keppra wasn't working, and Keppra sucks. So, I hope this educates you, and to focus more about your baby's emotional state and her heart and how she feels, instead of trying to give them what they want just so that they could continue the path that they were already going down no matter what. The goal is to get your baby seizure free and on a good medication that works. And they could rule out a lot of the big things that could cause seizures, like tumors in the brain, and they could do DNA testing just by poking her, 1 time. So do those things, but don't hospitalize your baby and put her through torture for no reason. Wait till later, or prolong it, or try and make it, tell your doctors your concerns. But yeah, I fought with them a few times. And do your homework. Go online, research the medications. Go to adults who have taken it, who actually could speak, because your baby can't speak, and you need to fight for her and do whatever you can to be on her side, because changing medications and upping medications is not a happy story for them. It's very traumatizing. So anyway, very passionate about this subject. If you guys have any questions, leave it in the comments below. I will make another video if you guys have more questions about Keppra or my experience.